Listen to the whispers of the ages, for tonight I will tell you a story older than stone and deeper than the sea. A story woven from light and shadow, from fire and tears. This is the ancient legend of Mark, the Crystal Capsule, and the Child of Light. A tale about the power that destroys and the power that builds. In the oldest times, when kingdoms were born from the elements and destiny was woven not in years but in choices, there lived a ruler named Mark of the Fiery Threshold. His kingdom was forged from flame and rock, a land of harsh beauty and unyielding will. Under his rule, the towers of his capital rose to the sky like black spears, and his warriors were disciplined like steel itself. The chronicles say that he held the power of command in his right hand, and his voice echoed, making others obey before they even understood why. Mark was a ruler whose word was law, and his gaze was a fire capable of melting even the hardest heart. He believed that strength was the only language the world understood, and that control was the only path to order. For him, order was everything, a perfect, unshakable structure where there was no room for weakness or doubt. But the wise knew. His fire burned without water. His power was immense, but his soul was empty. Under his iron grip, his lands flourished, but his people were silent. He lacked that quiet strength that doesn't command, but inspires, doesn't conquer, but unites. His kingdom was like a perfect statue, impressive, but cold and lifeless. And it was this very lack, this inner emptiness, that would shape his destiny, leading him down a path no one could foresee. A path that would confront him with his greatest fear, power that cannot be controlled. In lands where shadows danced with fire and mountains guarded ancient secrets, there lived a king named Mark. His kingdom was forged from will and steel, but his soul bore the mark of a distant defeat. As a young warrior, he had known the taste of loss, bitter and cold like winter mud, a taste that changed his destiny forever. On that night, under the mocking gaze of indifferent stars, he swore an oath before the flames of his campfire. His vow was simple and ironclad, never again to be weak, never again to let fate break him. This oath forged an unbreakable spirit within him and turned him into a great warrior whose name struck fear and respect. But the fire that hardened him also burned away his ability to bend to the fragile, to feel the gentle caress of life. He became a fortress, but forgot how to open doors. And when fate blessed him with a son, Mark didn't see a child reaching out to him with tiny hands, but a destiny that had to be protected at all costs. A mission more important than any battle, more sacred than any crown. The boy was named Elan, a name given only to children believed to carry the memory of light. An ancient legend whispered that such souls come in the darkest times to remind the world of the dawn of time, when everything was pure radiance and harmony. They were a bridge to lost paradise, a promise of a new beginning. Elan's eyes were deep and quiet, as if guarding a lake where the sky loved to reflect, and in his laughter one could hear the chime of crystals, an echo of a purer reality. He didn't cry like other children. Instead, his silence filled the palace halls with an inexplicable calm. To protect this light from the darkness of the world, from the pain and suffering he knew too well himself, Mark ordered a vessel worthy of it to be forged. Not of gold or silver, which time can corrode, but from the very essence of magic, from frozen moonlight and the tears of stars. He summoned the oldest masters whose families remembered how to speak to stone and how to weave a spell into crystal. They worked in complete silence, guided only by the power of the royal will and the purity of the child's soul. Driven by despair and a deep fatherly love that had turned into fear, Mark turned to forgotten rituals. He sought knowledge hidden in dusty scrolls and the whispers of the winds, magic so ancient that the very memory of it was almost lost. Not out of cruelty, but out of terror of the emptiness that threatened to swallow his son, he created the Crystal Capsule. This was not a prison of glass and metal, but an ancient artifact woven from moonlight, tears and frozen magic. Every particle of it was imbued with the will of a father ready to do anything. The capsule was a transparent substance that did not lock the body, but stopped the path of the soul, holding it at the threshold between worlds. In the embrace of the capsule, there was no pain, but also no comfort of the warm wind. There was no darkness, but also no hope of sunrise. Time was stopped in a single, perfect but lifeless moment, an eternal present without past or future. His son was saved from death, but also deprived of life. To maintain the child's fragile glow so that this last spark would not go out, Mark, in his grief, unknowingly began to draw on the energy of his kingdom. He became a conduit for a desperate hope. He absorbed everything, from the admiration of his subjects, through their quiet fear, to their unspoken feelings and hopes. Drop by drop, the life force of the people flowed into the capsule, feeding the illusion of life. But instead of growing stronger, the child remained just as ethereal, and the kingdom slowly began to wither. The fields stopped bearing fruit, the rivers slowed their course, laughter in the streets faded, and the colours of the world grew dim, as if covered with a thin layer of ash. The kingdom began to reflect the state of its king, frozen in quiet agony. Mark didn't understand why his sacrifice was in vain, why the more he gave, the more he lost. He looked at the pale glow and didn't see that it wasn't a flame, but only a reflection of stolen light. Because, as the ancient and relentless law engraved in the heart of every living being states, light taken by force does not warm. It only burns until it finally goes out. As time went on, the crystal shone brighter and brighter, and Elan grew quieter and quieter. Birds avoided the palace. The water in the wells became still, and Mark's dreams filled with cracked mirrors. Then came the awakening. On a starless night, Mark stood alone in the great hall and met 3 ancient guardians, the mage who showed him the truth without accusation, the shadow who admitted it was born of fear, not evil, the trickster who took off his mask and let the laughter go.
And they reminded him of the forgotten law of the world. Nothing alive grows in perfect protection.
When Mark touched the capsule, it didn't break. It simply stopped being needed. Its walls dissolved like morning mist, because the fear that held them no longer had power. Elan emerged, weak in body, but whole in spirit.
Strength protects, love brings to life.
In that moment, the fiery warrior stopped burning against the world. The mage became wisdom, not control. The shadow took its place as a root, not chains. And father and son walked together, not as power and inheritance, but as 2 souls learning to share light. The crystal capsule is not made of glass, but of fear, and it only breaks apart when one dares to love without owning. And that's why this legend is passed down quietly, as a warning and as a hope.